Okay, well, it's 12:01 on Monday, July 11th, and as of this moment, nobody else has joined me. But as I stated earlier, and as I think many of you did last week, you can listen to this at any time during the day. Last week, I could tell that a number of you had watched and listened to. I just had the audio last week, and but I would like this week you to if you listen, I want you to send me an email saying, yes, I listened. And what I will do is basically maybe toward the end of this lecture, if I remember to do this, I'll give you something, a keyword or something to include in your email so I know that you listened to the lecture. So hopefully I won't forget that at the end. But we are starting week 2. Your Intro to Philosophy. There aren't very many of us in this class, and so I know interaction has not been great. Many of you, those who have been getting on and doing your discussions, have done some good interaction. I try to get on there. If you answer or respond to the thread the day it is due, which is what you're supposed to do, I try to get on there by the end of the day and respond back to you, give you a little feedback on your comment. If you respond after that day, I will try to get back to you on that. I am willing to give some partial credit for those that come after, but really you need to do them. The requirement is you do those on the day they're assigned. That will help us get a little more interaction among the class members. So that's kind of the whole point. Do remember that you must log on and do something. Must post one of the assignments, even if it is a late assignment. I was allowed to count those to count for your attendance. And so today you need to get on and do something. There are 2 assignments that are due today, actually 1. There's a video lecture you're supposed to watch, but the discussion thread, the state of nature, is today's assignment, which is due today, and you really need to get on and do that. That's encouraged today for your attendance. There'll be a journal entry for this week for this GoToMeeting. You can do that today. That would count. And if you're one of those who have some assignments from last week, you need to catch up, you can do those. And if you're on there today, I will give you your attendance for today, but that's important for you. If you missed one of the quizzes last week, you're locked out. But I have put on there, I put in the grade book, if you'd like an opportunity to make the quiz up for partial credit, you need to email me, and that's what you must do. You must email me. I will then email you the quiz back and give you a certain amount of time to get that back to me. And of course, it's going to be at a partial credit, maybe half credit, but it's better than nothing. Several of you have missed some assignments this first week that is kind of putting you behind. Thankfully, the total points is not so much you can't make it up. And as we move into this week, at the end of this week, on Thursday, our last day, you have your first of 2 research papers due, one that will be due this week and one will be due the last week. And you're looking at capital punishment and a death penalty this week. And that is a big assignment. It's 100 points, and out of our total of 690, that one will make a difference. And so getting that in on time gives you a better chance of getting a good score, which will help you hopefully get your grades back up. So what I'm going to do today, and the time we have, it's about 12:05. I don't think this will take me more than 30 minutes for you to watch. So if you're watching this later in the day, hang on with me for here about 30 minutes. I'm going to go over what I'm expecting in the paper. I had given some if you got my email this morning, I think one of the areas on the schedule I had put that I would talk about the concept of justice today in this, and another area I said I would talk about the paper. So I thought, well, I'll do both. I'll try to shorten both, but I want to make sure, especially this first paper, that that you know exactly what I expect. I have not developed a rubric. I could do that, but I decided that what I have here in the PowerPoint will serve as the rubric. And so if I state it in the PowerPoint, I expect it on the paper. And if you want to do well, then kind of follow those. If you have any questions about the paper or any of the other assignments this week, again, as I said, send me a text, especially if it's time sensitive. My number again, 816-820-1342. and I will do my best to respond back almost immediately if I can. If it's something that's not time sensitive and you need a little more time, send me an email. You can just reply to any of the emails I've sent you, send it back to my Brown Mackey account. And that, of course, is the emails that I'm using to contact you. So if you're not getting those for whatever reason, let me know. But I'm going to go ahead. If you go to the GoToMeeting tab and you've clicked on to watch this, you'll also find that the PowerPoint is there for today. And so if you can pull that PowerPoint up, I'm going to pull it up. And I'm going to, since you're not with me right now, I can't share you my screen. So you're just going to basically be seeing me while I talk about the PowerPoint. But if you have that, go ahead and pull that PowerPoint up. And we're going to go through it really quickly here. I think it's pretty simple, self-explanatory. But again, if you have any questions on the PowerPoint, let me know later today what those questions are. But the PowerPoint there, starting on the second slide, and what I've done here, I've thrown in some tips here, things that when I grade papers for students, I try to do my best. I'm an editor also. I do a lot of writing, so but I will admit that I've worked more with Turabian over the last 10 years. But I teach for Indiana Wesleyan online. I grade a lot of online papers, and they use APA, so I pretty much have the format down now. But I continue to refer to this to a APA sample paper, the one I put in your student in the doc sharing that you can pull up. If you need assistance and you're online, go to Purdue University's OWL, O-W-L, which is where this sample paper comes from, and they have some great help. But one of the things, if you're looking at the first slide, one of the things that just seems, I don't know why it gives students so much trouble, is in the top line of your title page, you need to put in the header that phrase, running head with a colon, and then the title of your paper in all caps right after it. And then, of course, you need the page number, and that's pictured if you're looking at slide 2. It shows exactly what it should look like there. Make sure that when you get into the header to put this in, that you click on the thing that says first page different. There's, depending if you're using Mac or PC, it might be slightly different, but there's something there that allows you to make the header on your first page different than the rest of your document. You have to do that or it won't work right. So make sure you check that box. Put in running head. You can see only the R is capitalized in running head, colon, and then the title of your paper. If your title is longer than space, then you are to shorten it. I think it says there, I don't know if it gave you a number of characters, but basically shorten it if it's going to be too long. And then as you go on down the page, you can see exactly what is required. The title of your paper, your name, and the university on down the page. Going on to the next slide, what I am not going to require you to do, if you do this, that's fine. I don't necessarily need you to put an abstract. I don't think abstracts serve much of a purpose unless it's a 20-page paper. You're not writing a 20-page paper. Your abstract it's a summary, so someone doesn't have to read the full 20 pages. Abstracts, are there so someone knows, okay, here's what the paper's about. Do I want to read this paper? It might be if it's find it in a journal. Well, this is not what we're doing here, so I'm not really concerned you have an abstract. You can basically put that same information in your opening paragraph, and so it's kind of pointless. But if you put it, I'm not going to mark you down for that at all. However, don't expect for that to be included in your word count. Your word count is the body of your paper. And on the slide here, we're on slide 3, basically make sure on that first page of the body of your paper, you put at the top, in your header, it just should have the title of your paper in all caps. No longer should it say running head. That's why it's different. So make sure it has just the title of your paper in all caps. It is no longer saying running head. And then centered, not in bold, but in title case, centered at the top, should be the title of your paper before you then begin to write. And the requirements of the paper, moving on to the next slide, where it says the assignment, is that basically each student this week is expected to submit a 5-page, or what is approximately a 1,500 to 1,750 words. And has someone joined us on the meeting? Okay, I heard some kind of beep there. I didn't want to make sure I wasn't missing something. I'm getting something strange going on here. Hold on a second. my computer. All right, somebody else isn't on there, are we? Okay, well, something odd was going on there, so hopefully we're still working here and doing well. The assignment basically again says you to submit a 5-page paper, approximately 1,500 to 1,750 words, that addresses the following issue, and right there in red, should the death penalty be used to punish citizens of a society that have been convicted of the crime of murder? So make sure you are specific here. We're talking about yes or no on the death penalty in the case of a crime of murder. So that is exactly, keep it narrow. Most cases the death penalty isn't used for anything other than possibly cases of treason, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about murder. So simply you're going to have an up or down, or I guess you could always have a conditional response, because there could be cases where you say yes and some where you say no, or you may just be an up or down. But you can kind of decide how you're going to address that. And it says there on the slide, you should work to clarify the particular aspect of the issue that you will attempt to address individually and justify, which means support, your position through the use of strong philosophical arguments. Basically what we've talked about here in week 1, or last week in week 1, and the information we're going to look at in week 2, mainly week 2, that's why this paper is here, as you go through the stuff and talking about the concept of justice this week, but obviously stuff we use in week 1 can be helpful, very helpful, because all these philosophical things kind of run together. And then it says it asks you to use the course textbook, which you have your e-text, video lectures that you've been provided, that I've given you, that you've had access to, and I put it on the slide there in red, outside reading materials. You need, and I'm asking for at least 2 sources beyond the video lectures and beyond the textbooks. You need to do some search, even if it's Google searching. Make sure they look to be good, reliable sources. They're coming from a credible source, a news media, CNN, Fox News, ABC, somebody, or if it's a online versions of like Time magazine or something like that, where at least it's credible. I would say, remember though, if you try to pull it from a news source, make sure you can tell if it's not overly biased. But then again, on an issue like this, that's probably what you're going to get, is a lot of bias. And if it supports your side, then use it. I'm not going to be too critical here. I'm more wanting to see that you're going to find the sources and you're going to use them, which of course is pretty important. And so at least 2. So textbook, video lectures, and outside reading materials, and you need to have at least 2 that are outside reading materials. I expect you to see some stuff from your textbook. I expect stuff from the video lectures, things we've talked about, and then in addition to outside sources beyond the video lecture or your textbook. So that I think is pretty clear there. And again, when I talk about there's no rubric for this assignment, but when I go and I look to see if you've done this, I'm going to look to see what sources you have, and I'm going to look for 2 that go beyond just what we have here in the class material. So the breakdown of your paper, I think some of you may be great paper writers, some of you may struggle. I've tried to break it down here into a simple format. When I write, I'm currently working on my dissertation, which I'm hoping they'll allow it to only be about 130, 140 pages. I think I'm going to be able to accomplish that. But when I sit down to write it out, right now I have 5 chapters, and I look, okay, how long does each chapter need to be? Within the chapters, the sections, and a lot of times if you can learn to break it down, just like when you were taught to do an outline, that's what you're doing, you're breaking it down. And I envision this paper being 5 parts for you. You've got your introduction, 250 to 300 words, that's about a page. I had a professor say that if you can't introduce your topic on the first page of a paper, then you've said you're going to try to cover too much. So succinctly, but yet with enough detail, give us what you're talking about, and I want to go over how to do that in a minute. And then expect to have 1 or a little more than a page for each of 3 supporting points. You decide, I'm going to say, here is my answer to this question, and I'm going to have 3 points to support my answer. That is a good rule of thumb in any paper writing, especially a paper of this size. And so 3 points, so you're going to say, okay, this is what I believe about the death penalty. here's 3 points for support. For example, if you were going to say, well, I believe death penalty is okay in this case, I believe it's not okay here, then I would suggest you have a supporting point for what the cases that are, one at least for the cases that aren't, and then a third point that maybe justifies why you can make that distinction for both. But 3 points, an intro, 3 points, and then your conclusion. Your point should be a little bit longer than your intro and conclusion, and your conclusion typically is shorter than your introduction. Now some people want to reverse that, make the conclusion longer than the intro. Again, that's style. I typically find my conclusion is shorter. I feel I've said what I wanted to say in the paper. I typically conclude each section within a paper, and so I've already done sort of a conclusion. But there, it's just a little helpful there. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to hold you to those exact things. Again, on your intro, what I look to see in an intro is that you don't restate word for word, although sometimes you can do that in a way that works. But in a way, you should really restate or introduce the question to be discussed in a unique or attention-getting way. I always tell people, think about that this is going to be something that's going to be read by a lot of people. It may never be read by more than just myself and yourself. But let's assume that maybe it will. And you want to draw that reader in. You want to get their attention. Since we're talking about the death penalty, some shocking statements, or obviously don't be profane in that, but if you want to say something that, I believe the death penalty is warranted, something like that that kind of gets people's attention. Be a good writer. But basically, or restate the question in a way that kind of sets us up for what you're going to say. So be creative, but kind of restate the question, and then basically following that introduction, that first paragraph, or that first part where you're restating the question, then what you should do in your introductory paragraph is that you should include the 3 points you're going to say. So you're going to basically say, in whatever way, shape, or form, here's what I believe about the position that I'm going to write about, and I'm going to show or prove that I am correct, or however you want to say that, because I'm going to show number 1, ... number 2, ... number 3, ... Here are my 3 points in a sentence form that I know that later on in the paper I'm going to write more about. So that is a very basic way to set up that first page of your paper. Restate that question in an interesting way, or at least in your own words, and then here's the points I'm going to make in this paper, 1, 2, 3, and then maybe a closing words, something about how I'm going to accomplish it. But that's essentially what should be your intro, your first page. And then for each of your other points, this slide here, the next slide I'm on, which says supporting points 1, 2, and 3, this goes for each of your supporting points. So I didn't put in 3 slides, just put in 1 here. But so for each then of your supporting points, here's what a good rule of thumb breakdown is. Again, reintroduce that supporting point. You've already stated it on your first page, but now you're reminding us, okay, here's what I'm talking about. Also, if you decide to put a header here, this would be what's called a second level, or actually it'd be a first level header. If you want to give a header to your topic, and make sure you check in the APA that your first level header typically is centered in title case, and I believe, now I'm questioning myself here, whether it's bold or not bold, but double check that, and you'll find that right in that APA sample paper. It shows you a first level header. I believe it is not bold, but it is centered. Now if you have subheaders, then those change, but it is bold because your main title on that first page is not bold, and then a first level header typically is bold in the same title case, which means just the first letter of each word is capitalized, except for like and the, and then it is centered. But after that, introduce that point again, and then what I would suggest you do is find 3 more from your research, 3 more subpoints. So you've already got, I agree this, or about the death penalty, and here's 3, and on your intro, and here's 3 things why. Now within each of those 3, find 2 to 3 more supporting things, and you do that from your research. So it says there, paragraph 1, introduce your supporting point. Paragraphs 2 through 4, come up with 3 subpoints of support for your own personal thoughts and supporting thoughts or claims for your sources. Don't forget to cite your sources properly. And as toward the end of this PowerPoint, I'm going to give you a whole page of ways that you cite different sources that I found online for you to use, and so I've given you a great source. So make sure you cite those sources, and my guess is most of these points are going to be points that you're not going to have come up with on your own unless you clearly state that, so I expect to see some citation there. And then conclude by either restating, this is your sort of your fifth paragraph or thereabouts, conclude by either restating your supporting point in a unique way or by adding a strong supporting quote from one or more of your sources. That's a great way, in my opinion, to end. You've talked about, here's the first thing I'm talking about in this paper, why I don't agree with the death penalty if that's your position. I've given these 3 strong points, and now I'm going to kind of put down my final little stamp on it by giving this really strong quote from somebody that I've researched. That is a great and effective way to do that. All right, the next page in your, I mentioned about citations. The very next page in the PowerPoint are examples. If you're going to cite within the body of an APA paper, here is almost everything that you will ever probably need. Quotes with the author's name and text, quotes with the author's name, text, and reference, paraphrasing when the author's name and text, and it shows you whatever you're doing on the left, look to the right, and it shows you how to put that within your paper. And and there I've even given you the website. I don't think I hyperlinked that there, but you could put that into a web browser. And because I believe that came from, I can't remember the university that came from, but you can go find that there. And it may have been from Cambridge, one of those sites. Anyway, and you might be able to find some more helpful information if you need help citing within your paper. Okay, and then finally you come down to the conclusion, 2 to 250 words. Use your concluding paragraph of your paper to, again, restate the answer to the question, summarize your supporting points, and then what I would say, leave your readers with some final thoughts of your own. I want to hear your voice in this paper. Even though you're not experts necessarily, I'm not an expert in all things philosophy, but you guys would probably not categorize yourselves as experts either, but you have been thinking your whole life. You have been a philosopher, whether you realize it or not. And so it's okay at this level to go ahead and give me some of your viewpoints. Obviously, the bulk of the paper should be your research, but adding your voice to the paper is always recommended. And so in this case, I'm telling you, yes, I want to hear your voice. You've obviously stated your opinion, you've supported it, and now throw in a few more things. And if you have a personal story to include, I hope, obviously if for whatever reason you've dealt with a situation where you've known somebody or a situation where the death penalty was an issue, and you need to, you want to share that, I guess I could have a personal story where I have someone I knew that avoided the death penalty. And so there are things like that. We all maybe have those connections, and it kind of brings home maybe and really adds to the weight. So if you have a personal account like that and want to share it, that's encouraged. All right, so that is the paper, and then the final thing in your paper is your reference page. And there on the next slide, and this is also at the last of the APA sample paper, and that's exactly what I've taken this screenshot from, is that and there are some examples of how to cite different sources. You've got various ones there. You've got a journal. I think they've tried to give you several different ones there. And you can always go check online how to, if you've got an internet article, and actually I think the one, I'm not sure I think the one there at the bottom possibly is one. But if you're not for sure, whatever it is, just search in Google APA, how to include a internet source in my reference page, my APA paper, and you'll find all kinds of things if you can't find it on the page there or in the sample paper. So it's kind of hard to say you don't have access to anything anymore. You've got the internet, you've got access to be able to find out pretty much what you need on how to cite these papers. I hate to see students waste and lose points for simple, silly little things, but I will count you down. And I'm not that harsh. Probably 10 points out of your 100 will be based on your APA formatting, your writing, if there's misspellings, if you've got some grammatical issues here or there. So 10% of your grade will matter. Now, are you likely to lose more than a few points? Probably not, unless it's just absolutely awful. If you don't format it at all or whatever, or if you have just mistakes after mistakes. But you gotta hate to see you lose 3 or 4 points that you might need later when it comes to the end of the class time to get missing a letter grade because you miss it by a point or two and you've made a silly mistake in a paper. So take some time and make sure you put in some effort there. I sent you 2 emails today. I sent you the PowerPoint in an email twice because the first one I had the wrong date because these papers are due. Everything was correct. It is, as you see here on the screen, if you're looking at the PowerPoint, due by 11:59 Central Daylight Time, day 8. But on the next line of the first one I sent you, I had July 15th, 2016, but Thursday is July 14th, 2016, and you are to have this done by basically midnight on Thursday. If you can't get it finished, something has come up, you have technical issues, if it's a legitimate excuse that's just going to delay you till the early morning the next day, let me know. If for whatever reason something's come up and it's going to take you more time to get it done, there will be a deduction, but I'll accept late papers because I really want you to do the work, and you're going to need this if you want to pass this class. And there's no reason why you can't pass this class unless time. It's just something you can't find. But there will be a deduction, but I do want to give you that opportunity to do the work and to get it done. So, but please let me know if that's going to be the case. Don't come, the day before the end of class here in 2 weeks and you say, oh, well, I did want to turn that paper in. Can I do it right now? I don't want to be grading everybody's late work in the last hour before I have to turn in grades on 2 weeks from, I guess 2 weeks from tomorrow, or not 2 weeks, 2 weeks from Friday. So don't do that to me. Let me know beforehand. Let me know it's coming. And of course, don't wait till the last minute. Here's the week schedule on the next slide. And you have that in various places, but just quickly today, of course, to GoToMeeting, you need to view that. And what I'm going to ask you to do, if you're listening now, I want you to respond in an email that you listen to the GoToMeeting, and I want you to put in in your email or in the subject the concept of justice, okay, which was the title for today's GoToMeeting. So somewhere in there, so that I know you listened at least to this part, which is kind of here in the middle, the concept of justice. Put that in there, then I can give you credit for your attendance for GoToMeeting, which would help you get your attendance for today if for whatever reason you didn't get the discussion thread or something else done as well. But you really need to do the discussion thread, because if somebody comes back and questions your attendance and they don't see that you posted something online today, that can be a question. But I could probably give you credit for that for the GoToMeeting. But just so somewhere in the email, put the concept of justice, and I'll know that you viewed this. This week's schedule there, of course, today you also need to, there's some reading there. You will need a journal post giving your concepts of justice that's due by the end of this week. Today, of course, there's a video lecture, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, the state of nature, and then you need to respond to that in the discussion thread, and then begin working on your paper, which is strongly encouraged. Tomorrow you have some more reading to do, another video lecture on the concept of justice and the original position, and then a discussion thread concerning the original position, and then you have an essay quiz tomorrow, state of nature and the justification of government. So you have 2 online assignments due tomorrow. Again, you got to at least do one of them to get attendance, and both of them to get your full credit for the assignments. And then continue to work on the paper. On Wednesday, another video lecture on civil disobedience, and a discussion thread on civil disobedience, and a quiz on civil disobedience. And again, some more reading, and continue on your paper. And then Thursday, the only thing due Thursday other than your homework reading is that you need to finalize and submit your paper. Please do submit the paper on Thursday so you get credit for attendance, because that's the only way I can give you credit is if you submit. Now, I guess if you submit a late assignment, but if you get the paper done early, if you want to email it to me early so you know it doesn't get lost, that's fine. But then I want you to go on and in the Dropbox submit it on Thursday so you get your attendance, and I don't have to tell somebody why there's an issue there. That's taken care of. All right, the last time here, it's about 12:30. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes at most going over just a quick preview of the concept of justice. This comes right from your textbook. These are the 4 key issues that your text and this week's class is going to cover. And so you'll find this very same information there in the textbook, but I just want to kind of go over it quickly. On the first slide there, the first issue we'll discuss, or you're going to be discussing in this chapter and this week, is what is the justification of the government's authority? It says here the government may have the power and the force to rule its people, but not every ruler or use of force is legitimate. So what conditions make it legitimate for the government to be in power? Obviously, this issue is a fundamental one, for if a government is not legitimate, then all other issues about the proper role of government and a relationship to it do not arise. And so you're looking at issues, why have humans, societies, allow people to rule over them? Why do we give a government power? What is the justification for that? And there's different justifications. Some people, maybe who believe in anarchy, don't believe in any. But even anarchists truly have a philosophy, because basically most anarchists just want to rule themselves, which is a philosophy of government. They just won't admit it. But anyway, so kind of that'll be the first day and the first topic this week. Second issue is the theory of justice. We frequently evaluate a government in terms of efficiency. During political campaigns, and then we are in the middle of one right now, candidates will make all kinds of promises. Here's what I'm going to do if I'm going to be elected. And then if they don't get it done, we ask them, why didn't you get that done? But we say one of the things we want to see is our government efficient? But then again, efficiency has a limit, because we've had, as it states there in the PowerPoint, it has frequently been pointed out that when the fascist dictator Benito Mussolini took charge of Italy in the 1920s, he succeeded in making the trains run on time. Similar, the communist dictator Joseph Stalin brought mechanization to Russian agriculture during the early part of the 20th century. And you could even say that Hitler, and he definitely did turn the economy of Germany around. There's no doubt he did that. However, was the efficiency of those 3 rulers, knowing what we know about them and the other things they did, was efficiency the only important thing? Because obviously they did crimes against humanity, in essence, in order to be efficient. I've always said this, I've taught history for years, I always said that I think one of the things that led Hitler, I think he had obviously a hatred to the Jews, but he also, I think, realized they had the wealth. He needed the wealth to turn his government around. He thought one of the easiest ways to get it is to be able to take it from them. And of course, if you turn everybody against them, that makes it easier. So he was very efficient. But the way he went about it, obviously, we would have some issues with. I hope we have some issues with. And so is efficiency the only thing to determine how well the government works? The third issue we examine this week is the relationship between the individual and the state, between freedom and control. It says here, we all cherish our individual freedoms, but too much individual freedom will lead to social chaos. Hence, some degree of government control is necessary, but too much government control would lead to an unacceptable level of tyranny. So where do we draw the line between individual freedom and government control? Is the government to be thought of as our servant, doing only the things we cannot do ourselves, or is the government to be thought of as a parent, looking out for our best interests? In other words, is the major responsibility of the government to serve us by maximizing our individual liberties, but allowing us to live our individual lives as we please? Or is the major responsibility of the government to produce the best results for ourselves and society in general, even if this goal requires limiting our freedoms? Where do we draw the line? I used to teach high school. I used to tell them, high school students didn't like to hear this, I don't think anybody does, but I used to tell them that the speed limit that is posted on a highway is a freedom. Now, most high school kids, especially if they were juniors or seniors or sophomores who just got their driver's license, did not see that as a freedom whatsoever. They saw that as a restriction. But I explained to them, if you obey the speed limit, you are free to drive on that road without, theoretically, being bothered by the authorities. You are obeying the law. They are restricted by that speed limit as long as you are obeying it. The restriction actually is on the government. Now, again, that's sometimes hard to argue to high schoolers, but it is true. Laws are actually a restriction on the government because they give us freedoms. And what we have to point out is when the government, now when we break that and we go beyond that freedom, they have the right to punish us. But when they restrict take that they go beyond their restriction and interfere with our freedoms, then we have the right to speak up. And that is obviously a big issue. It always is a big issue. But where do we draw that line? And then finally, this week, we examine obviously the topic of civil disobedience, something that has been around in every government for all of history pretty much, in different ways, shapes, or forms. And so it's nothing new. It says if we agree that the government is sometimes necessary and even good, then it would seem that obeying the government is necessary and good. To have laws that no one obeys is no better than having laws at all. But there are situations in which it would be bad and even immoral to obey the government. Under what conditions would it be morally permissible to break the law? These two questions are the focus of the fourth section of the chapter on political philosophy. And then people talk about, if your family is starving, would you rob a store if you felt no other way? Where do you draw the line? Or is there no line? Or is there a harsh line? Those are the issues that we are asked and have to deal with. And so that's what you'll be taking a look of in the last part of this week. And then finally, you do need to make your journal post. And on the last slide there, it talks about your takeaway journal entry for today's GoToMeeting. For the day's GoToMeeting will be to think about the nature of justice and to submit a thoughtful journal response wherein you describe what you believe the concept of justice requires. So taking all those four things into account, or maybe one that's really on your mind, kind of give us your idea of justice. How do you view the government's control of you? How do you view their role? How do you view your role within this? Just kind of some of your thoughts. And that you have again, and there again, there's an error in your PowerPoint. Those are actually supposed to be due by Thursday, July 14th, and I have Friday, July 15th. But make sure you have that in by Thursday. And again, I apologize for that error. All right, so that's it on the PowerPoint. That's it on today's GoToMeeting. Again, as I stated earlier, if you are listening to this later in the day, you need to send me an email, let me know you listened, and then put in that phrase that I gave you back about 10 to 15 minutes ago here in the middle of the lecture so that I know that you listened. So if you missed that, go back right after I finish talking about the paper and before I start talking about this week's topic. I gave you that you were to put in your email or in the subject of the email to let me know you were on here. All right, well, it took about 35 minutes today, which wasn't too bad. Again, I want to hear from some of you. About half of you are on the internet every day doing your work and give me the opportunity to respond to your work. The other half, it's hit or miss, and I just hate to see students who don't take advantage of an opportunity to get a good grade in a class when really it's on your hands. And in an online class, this is in your hands, guys. The 6 of you in this class I know are all capable of doing the work, but if there are issues you're having, again, I have students, a lot of online students have a lot of family issues come up. I get it. I understand. I'll give you as much help as I can. I'm restricted how much I can in some sense, but I will do the best I can to help you. But I got to know. If I don't know it, I can't do anything about it. So thanks again for watching this week. Again, let me know you were on here. Get your work done today that's required today. Get online, post something, and post. Make sure it's a good post. Make sure you're doing the assignments as indicated, and get started on those papers because don't wait until Thursday and realize that you are not able to give the kind of paper that you normally would have. So, alrighty, thank you, and hopefully I'll see you guys next week. All right, bye.